Hi and welcome to the Instagram and TikTokification of Science session, which is being held as part of the Entrepreneurship Institute's Festival of Disruptive Thinking. My name is Jess Sells. I'm the Patient and Public Engagement Manager at the Research and Development Department at the Guy's and St Thomas's NHS Foundation Trust. I'm here to open and moderate this event featuring Doctoral Training Fellow Dr. Beibei Du-Harpur and PhD student Ella-Louise Hubber. For those not familiar with the Entrepreneurship Institute at King's, they believe that everyone can be entrepreneurial and that entrepreneurial people can help make the world a better place by solving problems to create a healthier, smarter, more equal and sustainable future. Their role is to help all King's students, staff and alumni to develop entrepreneurial mindsets to help our community to become a better, more creative problem solvers, develop skills that will make them more employable or boost their careers, come up with more disruptive and innovative ideas, and of course, start and scale successful startups. This festival celebrates disruptive thinkers, creative problem solvers, and innovative ideas in and around King's. So today we're joined by Dermatology Demystified and Big Science Energy, otherwise known as Beibei Du-Harpur and Ella-Louise Hubber. In addition to both being incredibly brilliant scientists, they are both social media content creators that have over 120,000 followers between them on Instagram and TikTok, respectively. To start us off, we'll have Ella, a PhD student in cell therapies and regenerative medicine, who'll be talking about how she's embraced the emerging medium of TikTok to become one of the most influential science TikTokers on the platform. She uses her channel to make science interesting, engaging, and entertaining, by talking about everything from why humans have facial hair, subterranean insect states, and the smell of Uranus. Then Beibei's going to talk to us about why her Dermatology Demystified Instagram, and she's used her research expertise to carve out a niche in science-based skincare content creation, and actively creates content that helps debunk many of the myths that plague the internet. Following their presentations, we'll move on to a moderated Q&A before opening up the floor to the audience. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Ella for her presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Jess. Okay, I'll just share my screen. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for logging in. As Jess said, I'm Ella, and I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about using TikTok as a platform for science communication, and how I use it especially. So just a bit about myself first. I'm a fourth year PhD student. I'm studying a treatment for type 1 diabetes called islet transplantation. But when I'm not in the lab, I spent most of my free time doing public engagement and outreach. So traditional outreach and engagement means communicating your research or the broader ideas of the science behind your research to the public. So that could include giving talks in schools, doing fun science activities with kids, inviting members of the public to talk to you, talking to patients who might one day benefit from your research area. And as you can see, I've done all of this and more. And the aims of this kind of outreach they vary from event to event, but generally what you're trying to do is build trust and confidence between the public and researchers, dispel misconceptions, collaborate with the public, particularly patients, and get young people more involved in science. And maybe so they might even consider this as a career one day. And the benefit of this kind of outreach and engagement is really tangible. You get to see firsthand how it affects people, but it's not necessarily wide-reaching. And that's where social media comes in, of course. So last November, I started a TikTok account where I use a combination of comedy, current trends, and exciting science to produce content which addresses common scientific misconceptions, what it's like to be a scientist, and interesting current research. And through this, I've gained around 95,000 followers in under a year. And my most viewed video has over 1 million views, which I hope speaks to some of the success that this kind of engagement can have. And I will say that whilst followers and viewers are a great indicator of reach, the real barometer for me of success of this tool for science public engagement is the comments I get from people asking about how they could pursue science in the future, or how they might be able to do research properly on the internet, that kind of thing. So one of the reasons that I chose to start using TikTok specifically is because I've heard from a number of young people and their parents and seen online that one of the most desired careers right now for young people is to be a social media influencer, like a YouTuber, or these really big people on TikTok. I mean, I certainly didn't join the app to become an influencer, but I definitely lean into that idea by using my, I guess, personality to try and show what it's like to actually be a researcher, to make it fun and funny and accessible. And someone did describe what I do as humanizing science, which I think is a really nice descriptor. But many people have done this a lot better than I have, both on and off TikTok. For example, Hank Green here, who has almost 6 million followers on TikTok and just as many on YouTube. We can probably describe him as a science influencer. A few years ago, we might have looked to people like Brian Cox or Bill Nye the Science Guy as the faces of science, but it's the big names like these now on TikTok that will be the faces of science for a whole generation. That really can't be understated. These science communicators are reimagining what science looks like and feels like by providing a direct line of communication with their audience to ask questions and engage, which has really never been done before in this way. Some of them, like me, are, I guess, trying to show people behind the scenes of science in a way that many of them would not have had the chance to see otherwise. And one of the ways I'm peeling back the curtain, I guess, is by using TikTok's live streaming feature and to live stream my experiments. So these images are from one I did a few weeks ago. This is just a normal experiment I do really regularly. It's really just day-to-day lab stuff, but I get around average 200 viewers and sometimes up to 500 or 600 viewers, which was really crazy to me at first. But there really does seem to be an interest in this because what might seem very everyday to me or to my colleagues is really a closed off world to most other people. So many of the viewers are young people who will ask about what A-levels I did, what I did at university, how to get into science. And that's how I can see it's often going to the right people. I mean, I do get some crazy comments sometimes, especially when it was more in the height of the pandemic. I did get a lot of conspiracy theory stuff, but, you know, it gave me a chance to dispel misconceptions in a good way as well. So that was also in its own way very useful. And of course, this is much more wide-reaching than anything I've done before. I've done hands-on experiments with a group of a dozen kids before, but never with 500 people watching. And I do believe that this kind of thing, live streaming actual experiments and actual science, maybe doing tours of labs and stuff, is going to become much more common on TikTok and other streaming platforms like Twitch in the coming months and years. You're already kind of seeing it on TikTok. For example, there is this great channel which streams the view of different stuff from down a microscope. It sounds really simple, but it's getting people really engaged. Oh yeah, just before I finish, I want to briefly talk about why TikTok has been such a successful platform for me and others, and that is the really beautiful TikTok algorithm. Now, if you haven't used TikTok before, the landing page of the app is called the For You page, and it's basically this endless series of recommended videos and sometimes live streams. And there will be popular and random videos at first as you watch and like things, and then it'll become more attuned to your preferences. So like any other social media app, except the videos you're shown can be from anyone, not just people you follow, which I think makes TikTok quite unique as an app. So as a creator, you'll put a video up, it will be randomly shown to some of your followers, but also to a small random group of people that are not following you, chosen based on things like hashtags. And then the way that those people engage with that, if they engage well with it, so liking it, commenting and sharing, will basically give it a performance rating, and TikTok will push it out to a bigger group of people who will then go through that same process until either the push ends or it blows up. I mean, this means that anyone, even someone with no followers, could in theory make a video that will reach millions of people if their content is good enough. I mean, there's certainly a level of risk and inconsistency with this. Even people with hundreds of thousands of followers might make a video that reaches only 500 people. But that's really not that important unless you're trying to make money from this, which I'm not. So generally, it's been a really beneficial system. And the algorithms served me very well and sent my content to millions of people who are unlikely to have seen it elsewhere. So yeah, that's one of the benefits of TikTok. But yeah, I mean, that's all I really got to say. I just want to end by saying that there is really a huge need right now to leverage the power of digital platforms to humanize science and remove barriers to information. I think this became even more apparent during the pandemic when the science around COVID and vaccines was moving incredibly quickly and misinformation online was spreading like wildfire. TikTok is being used to address these things in many ways, and it's quickly becoming an incredibly powerful tool for scientists to tackle misinformation, to open doors to young people interested in science, and to just generally build trust between public and scientists by tapping into things that people find funny and interesting in a very authentic way, and by taking advantage of that algorithm, of course. In the future, I really hope to see it being used more by scientific institutions as a whole, considering the huge audience that is available there. But in the meantime, I think we'll definitely see more and more individuals within their specific niches flock to platforms like this. And I'm really excited to see it. So let me that's everything.
Thank you very much for having me on this Festival of Disruptive Thinking presentation. Like Ella, I also started a social media platform during the pandemic. Just to explain my background, my name is Beibei. I'm a dermatology registrar based at Guy's and St Thomas's, and I've taking some time out of my clinical training to do a PhD based between the Francis Crick Institute and the Centre for Stem Cells. So I'm a final year PhD student now. And so skincare during the pandemic became a really big deal. So during the first lockdown in particular, skincare and skincare routines became enormously popular. And being a dermatologist, I was spending probably more time than I used to on Instagram and YouTube at the start of during lockdown. And, you know, lots of people spend lots of time on social media. So there was just a huge amount of information that I noticed circulating. So the main platforms that this was occurring were TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Yeah, so this was something that I observed. And people who are influencers in the skincare space are sort of colloquially referred to as skinfluencers. And this is a very lucrative niche within the sort of content creation, social media realm, with strong engagement and potential for affiliate marketing. A lot of these people have huge followings with an obsessive knowledge of skin and skincare ingredients and products. And it was really it was something that, you know, whenever I'm online and reading about stuff, I was amazed at how much people knew about skin and skincare and about things relevant to my profession, but often just with a slight twist of misunderstanding. So why did I start an Instagram page? So a big factor for me was definitely being in lockdown and wanting a creative outlet when sort of the leisure activities that were normally available to us were limited. I was also pregnant, and I think that also made me just think, oh, I've got to do something a bit different. And it was just being at home a lot and being a bit bored. The subtle misinformation online was something I felt like I could address because of my expertise. And I was also reading a lot of papers, and I thought there were some papers of general interest that I thought would be worth discussing on social media. And I felt, maybe because of lockdown as well, I felt a desire to engage with all of the people that I could see having an enormous interest in skin and dermatology, but didn't necessarily have access to the relevant experts. So, and I realized that actually dermatology is being taught online by a lot of non-dermatologists. Now, I'm not saying that all skincare is relevant to dermatology. It's certainly not the same thing at all, but there is definitely an overlap. And I noticed in many, many occasions that things were being explained incorrectly. And especially amongst British dermatology, there aren't that many dermatologists on social media. And I realized that our absence was creating a power vacuum that was being exploited by people who some had you know, very well-meaning intentions, just really interested and enthusiastic, just wanted to share information, and other people were just outright making money from it. And I felt like this, you know, there's something needed to change about this ecosystem. And misinformation in dermatology is a really big problem. This paper that was actually published in the International Journal of Dermatology was very, very limited in its scope. It really only looked at Facebook, to be honest. Personally, my experience of imprecise content is that it is absolutely everywhere, even by people who create generally quite excellent content. A lot of it is slightly miscommunicated often, and it's for a variety of reasons. I think the number one problem is that things that are related to human biology and the clinic and what we see in clinical settings is very nuanced, and the nature of how information is being transmitted on Instagram, where it's often little infographics, or on TikTok where it's short videos, it's very, very difficult to communicate that nuance. So people end up with extremely black and white ideas of how things work, which is not representative of human science and biology. And a lot of this misinformation can lead to actual harm. So this is a Australian celebrity who tried a home beauty procedure that she saw on TikTok, and ended up with an extreme reaction and an infection. So, and this has led to very significant scarring, which a lot of which might not fully disappear. So there's quite a lot of common misinformation or even disinformation online about skin and skincare products. So common ones that I come across are that sunscreen can cause skin cancer, and they don't prevent skin cancer. It's actually a big, like a big pharma is out to get you type thing, a bit like people being concerned about vaccines. There are people who are concerned that sunscreens are actually very harmful. There is also a belief that natural products are inherently better for you than synthetic ones. And I think that this belief is very, very pervasive. And even, especially as a new mum, you come across a lot of things aimed towards young new mums and children. It's full of, this kind of natural organic rhetoric, which has very little scientific basis. There's the general concern that chemicals are killing us. And then also there's lots of myths about things related to acne, for example. So acne face mapping is really big on various platforms. So people think that, oh, if you've got poor digestion, that might lead to acne in one part of your face. If you've got a problem with your liver, it might lead to acne in another part of your face. Obviously, this is all complete pseudoscience. There is a significant amount of misinformation coming directly from a large organization in America called the EWG, which is the Environmental Working Group. They actually cause a lot of problems across many, many areas, but they have this particular website called Skin Deep, where they basically misuse science and toxicology data to declare that perfectly safe, vetted ingredients and products are actually toxic. What they claim has no scientific basis, but it's enormously popular, and it's pushed by a lot of celebrities to launch their natural and safe beauty products. So aside from the sort of misinformation, disinformation, there's the whole inaccurate information issue. So there's this inaccurate information which is being constantly shared by non-experts or even experts. The reason for this is that many of those sharing information have little to no professional training or clinical experience in managing skin diseases. So, for example, a lot of aesthetic doctors will have an Instagram page because they perform aesthetic treatments, but they are not trained in dermatology. Aesthetic medicine is not actually a medical specialty. And then there are many people who share information about skincare because they're enthusiastic, but they're not necessarily science literate. And finally, there's a lot of regurgitation of info learnt elsewhere on social media without any fact checking occurring. So, all of these things, I think, leads to a necessity of there being experts on social media in some capacity or another. And there are positives and negatives to all of these things. So the positives, I would say, are, you are building relationships and learning from other professionals all the time. So I have personally learned an enormous amount about skincare, the whole beauty industry, and all of the things related to it. regardless of my professional background. So, you know, I work as a medical dermatologist. I'm not a cosmetic dermatologist. As a trainee dermatologist in the UK, we see NHS patients who need treatment for severe psoriasis, severe eczema, severe acne, skin cancer. You know, we're not beautifying people in the NHS on the whole, although, you know, they may look better from our, you know, medical treatments. So, but regardless of whether that being my comfort zone, people look at a dermatologist and expect us to know about skincare. And I realized this because, you know, even when I was working in my PhD, people would often ask me about skincare routines and what skincare products they should be buying. So regardless of whether this is something which is included in part of my training, people expect me to have that knowledge and expertise. So I started making an effort to really learn about it myself. And actually, I've learned an enormous amount through social media from other experts. So, for example, regulatory experts, toxicologists, people who have experience in marketing and formulation, product development, all of those kinds of things. So, and the great thing is that as you engage with people in real time, you know, if you put out a post explaining something, you get real-time engagement and feedback on whether that's useful or not. And that is really very, it's very rewarding. And it's also useful to you as someone who's creating information, because you know whether something is hitting home or of interest. So, and then by putting information out there, that's from your niche, you're improving the knowledge base of the online space. So you have this opportunity to create a positive network effect of information. There are also, as a complete aside, opportunities to connect with skincare brands and dermatology journals. So, you know, I've, you know, liaised with, say, the British Journal of Dermatology through my Twitter account, for example. And finally, it is definitely a potential source of income as well. The negatives of being on social media. So I think Instagram is a very different platform to TikTok. I do have a TikTok account, but I don't really use it because, you know, I did start the whole thing when I was 6 months pregnant, and then obviously I had the baby, and then sort of ran out of time basically. But you know, I think Instagram is, you know, there's a lot of interaction between creators, I guess, and you end up with lots of little communities forming. I don't know, maybe Ella can share whether this is something that also happens on TikTok as well. So there's definitely sort of niches and almost like sort of online friendship circles that end up forming very organically. So you are subject to judgment by your peers in general if they don't like the fact that you're doing social media. You know, medicine in the UK is quite old-fashioned, and a lot of people don't understand why a doctor would ever be on social media. And you can certainly be judged by members of the public. You can be attacked or bullied. That's happened to me. It's also a considerable amount of work to produce content, and you know, especially some of the posts that I've done, I've literally spent hours and hours and hours doing a literature review to put into infographics to share with the public, and that's an enormous amount of work. So it must be fun and enjoyable for you. And then finally, this is particularly the case for doctors because we are regulated. There are many ethical dilemmas, so you have to be really careful about things such as conflicts of interest. So how do you grow a social media page as a scientist / doctor? So the important thing is that your knowledge can be transformed into digital currency, because all of these apps work by capturing attention. So if your knowledge is of interest to people and has the potential to attract attention, if you can translate it into something that will grab attention, then the app will work its magic to send people towards your page. And that's fundamentally it. I think authenticity is very important to keep your own page sustainable if that's what you want to do, because otherwise you will definitely burn out. And on Instagram, information that is useful, in particular savable or shareable, is what will create growth and engagement. So, for example, these two pages, Epidemiology and Nini and the Brain, I don't know if any of you guys follow them, but they are both sort of COVID-related science communicators with a focus on data science and risk analysis, that kind of thing. One of them is a PhD student, in fact. And yeah, they both grew hugely during the pandemic because obviously the content they were creating was relevant, timely, and was capturing public attention. So Ella's obviously spoken a bit about TikTok algorithms. Instagram's algorithm works slightly differently, I think, to TikTok. I would say it is more of a closed algorithm than TikTok, which has this For You page where you can sort of swipe. Instagram actually created Reels about, must have been sort of summer, autumn of last year, which is basically their copy of TikTok. And that does have a more sort of TikTok-X For You type function. It does have an explore page. I don't know how often people use their explore page, but often, so my growth has been from my content being shared by other people. So when people see a post that they like, they might share it to their stories, and then their followers will then click on that and then look at my page and then decide whether they want to follow me as well. And that's essentially how I've gained all of my followers, I would say. So in that sense, it's very much more about, I've essentially gained the followers from someone else's existing community. So the people who follow me have come from other creators mostly. Can you hack the algorithm? You can, to some extent. So if you aggressively engage with other creators, like, share their content, comment on their posts, and then people end up kind of like banding together and doing this like really aggressively, then that can certainly help drive your engagement. It will work to some extent because at the end of the day, you can't force someone to follow you. So your content has to be of a certain, it has to be interesting enough to be worth following in the first place. And then there's this question of how, because if you become addicted to gaining a following, which can certainly happen to some extent, I certainly felt that way at times whenever I first started, because you see this growth and you think, okay, I've got to, it's like getting, a good grade. You think, okay, I've got to replicate that success. You start trying to think of what will benefit the algorithm and not what you want to create. And this is a bit of a trap. And I think it's very important to try and remember what you wanted to make in the first place and not end up creating content that will merely feed the algorithm most beneficially. I think that's very important, for a doctor, particularly where, you have to be very authentic and act with integrity. So that's definitely something to bear in mind, because essentially once you start creating content, then you are almost like being employed by Instagram. And if they change the algorithm and say, right, only Reels will bring you followers, and then you are then obliged to suddenly become a video creator when that may not be what you want to do in the first place. So financial opportunities. So, obviously this is from the Entrepreneurship Institute. So we'll talk a little bit about the hustle aspect of things. Companies will find you through social media. And obviously I'm a dermatologist, so I have an existing job, I guess. So people actually use Instagram a bit like LinkedIn, and my little bio has my credentials on it, so it very much acts a bit like a LinkedIn. It's worth knowing that platforms such as YouTube have very well established mechanisms for generating passive income, i.e. views translating into money. Instagram video now has a similar function built in for accounts with large followings. For smaller accounts like mine, I can do something like set up badges, which I will never do because I think it would look bad for me to do it. But people can, I think, like donate you money as you live stream, but I think this sounds like a terrible idea. And I think it's very important, just that you're aware of it, to stay on the right side of the law when it comes to things being gifted to you. So I've been gifted a lot of stuff through my Instagram account, and it's worth knowing that certain gifts, gifts in kind specifically, are taxable. So my take-home messages are: if you have knowledge and expertise that is of value to society and will capture people's attention, the social media platforms where attention is currency will translate that into growth and engagement for you. It is really excellent public engagement and science communication practice. It's a very large time investment, especially as you're building a following, but it may provide some financial reward and passive income in the future. So this could actually be a career for people in the future. I don't know how TikTok is monetized particularly, but because social media is so huge and such a big part of all of our lives now, I imagine that more and more mechanisms for how being a content creator will, all of these things will have more ways of generating money in the future, not less. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take some questions.
Thank you so much, Beibei. That was brilliant. So informative, and yeah, it's quite scary seeing quite how much misinformation there is out there. We all know that it happens, but just kind of like seeing it is quite intense, and how far it spreads. So you and Ella are both doing a great job on kind of tackling that. And it's really nice to see how, although you're both doing social media communications, you're both doing it in such different ways and having different outcomes and aims. So that's really great. So thank you both so much for sharing that. So for the next 10 or so minutes, I'm going to ask you both a few questions, and then if anybody in the audience would like to ask some questions too, please pop them in the chat, and then once we've finished our initial ones, we can go back over the ones that you've sent over. So first of all, you both obviously use different platforms for different reasons. Why did you specifically pick the ones that you chose? Were you interested in potentially using other platforms, or what is it about each one that made you attracted to them, and kind of does it help shape the content that you produce? Ella, do you want to go first?
That's a good question. I can't even remember why I particularly chose TikTok in the end. I think I started using it. I think I felt like there was maybe an untapped, audience there. Most people my age and older don't use TikTok, so there was definitely like a vacuum there, and there still is to some extent. So yeah, that was definitely my initial thinking.
So more kind of target audience being younger, and that was who was on there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. And Beibei?
So yeah, Instagram, to be honest, I would use TikTok, except I can barely use the app because I'm even older than you, Ella. So Instagram was mainly, so to be honest, when I first started my Instagram account, I could barely use Instagram either. I only just learned how to use stories. So, I was by no means a big social media person at all. But Instagram, I sort of figured out how to use, and I guess it was an app that I personally used more myself. And I would definitely explore other platforms. But, being a new mum and finally a PhD student, that's just not really an option. But 100%, I think the reach that you get from TikTok is fantastic and probably far better than Instagram. So I would 100% use TikTok for sure, and YouTube. So those would be the three platforms I would like to do if I was to pursue more social media. But it's just all of these things take an enormous amount of time. So, it's just finding time to do it all.
I think, and Ella, with your examples of how you're live streaming stuff that you're currently already doing, that kind of almost saves time in content prep, I guess, because it's just there and happening. You're not doing lots of editing in the lead up to posting.
Yeah, I mean, live streams are super easy to do. That's a really easy way on TikTok to get followers, because you're like so many random people will just drop in and follow you. But even that, like Beibei says, I mean, Beibei, you do infographics that take so much time. All I do is post really basic, like either skits or just like, oh, this is some funny research I found. And that takes so long. So I can't even imagine doing this on multiple platforms. You'd have to make it your career. Like, it would have to be your job. That's the only real option. And obviously we are both doing other things.
So what has been the kind of reactions from your fellow scientists when you tell them, or when they see your social media posts? Do they kind of, are they interested? Are they inspired? Does it make them want to do it? And should they be doing it? Beibei, do you want to go first? Sorry.
So yeah, obviously for me as a doctor and dermatologist, there's this big kind of, as I mentioned in my talk, like professionally, there's a lot of people can look on social media in general unfavorably. So I'd always thought, okay, I would only do this as a consultant, because then you're protected by the fact that you're like very senior. And then I realized that I shouldn't wait, and I should just do it if I felt like it was the right thing to do. And I think that as long as you behave with integrity and according to GMC guidance, and there's not a huge amount of guidance, but there's enough in there that I think can underpin that can help you make decisions about how you do it. I think one of the key things from the GMC is that you don't undermine public opinion of doctors, and I think that's a very good catch-all guidance as to how you behave online. So I think behaving professionally is really important. And I think I very much stayed within my lane in terms of what I create as well, and make sure that it's very much sort of science and dermatology heavy, because that's where I have expertise in. And all of the feedback I've had from colleagues and senior colleagues has actually been really positive.
Great, thank you. And how about you, Ella?
I'm sorry, what was the question? I got caught up in Beibei's answer.
Essentially, what do other scientists think when you tell them that you've got your TikTok account?
Yeah, okay.
So are they inspired to do it themselves?
You know what? No one I know watches my content, so it's not an issue. Because literally no one I know uses TikTok, so it's not been an issue at all. When people do catch it, it seems to be very positive. Some people don't really understand what's going on, and that's fine. It really is like it's very off the cuff comedy stuff, so it's a bit nonsensical a lot of the time. They're like, oh yeah, okay, that's fun. I guess because it's not. So yeah, I wanted to kind of address some of the stuff Beibei said then, because we do definitely take completely different tacts with it. Obviously I think it's important to behave with integrity and professionalism, but I suppose because part of my brand, if you want to call it that, is making research more accessible to normal people, that sometimes I don't necessarily act very professionally. I maybe am a bit more like down to earth is maybe not the right term, but a bit more normal's not the right term either. I just a bit approachable. Yeah, I don't want to say you're not approachable, Beibei. You're very approachable as a person, but it's more just maybe I do swear and maybe I call people out sometimes. I'm not like super unprofessional or anything, but there's an element to if you're doing anything comedic, then there's definitely going to be some level of unprofessionalism there, I guess.
I guess as well, if you're coming from a doctor perspective, you have more restrictions on how you're able to communicate and be perceived.
Definitely. And I think, I think it's great to be a bit edgy, and I think that, you want to be a bit edgy and engaging, and it's just about finding the right balance of being edgy and interesting. And I think basically I've gone for an ultra safe, professionally approach. I mean, I could probably push it a bit more, but I'm just a bit too much of a wuss to do that, basically, on a professional level. And that's purely because I'm a doctor, and I have a lot of bosses that I have to keep happy.
Yeah, I definitely don't have the same restrictions on me. And I think it's also a point to make, is that, I mean, on TikTok and YouTube especially, where you're using yourself more, I mean, Beibei, because you're mostly through infographics and stuff, I guess you're not like advertising yourself as a person. I have to really push who I am sometimes, and that can affect your approach. But I also try and operate to some, a good level of integrity. There's so many people who are scientists or say they're scientists on these kind of platforms who maybe will wade into things that they don't necessarily understand. It's not that I'm approaching science in a more general way. It's not that I won't talk about things that I'm not like actively researching, but that if I genuinely don't know or like feel like I don't understand, I either won't talk about it or I'll be like very, very clear that I am not an expert in this area, which is something that is often lacking in these spaces, people being really upfront about what they do and don't understand. So that's what I try. Sorry, that question
a really
went way
excellent
off
point.
the rails, sorry.
No, it's good. That's what we want to hear. So yeah, no, I think that's an excellent point. We have had a question in from Lee. Hi, Lee. I don't know if you want to ask it yourself and pop on your mic. If not, I can read it out.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy. Hello. Thank you, both of you. And Ella, I'm a fan of your TikTok. I do your TikToks of late. So thank you. They really make me laugh. Yeah, I just wanted to say, I wondered if either of you work collaboratively with people to produce. Ella, in particular, I was wondering who does your filming for your TikTok, or whether you just kind of set it up and work that way, and also more broadly whether either of you work collaboratively with your posts.
I film everything, this is one of the reasons it takes me so long to make any content, because I'm constantly, and especially in the lab when I'm trying not to bother people, running around setting up my phone on a stand or whatever around the lab. So I film everything. I don't really collaborate with anyone for any of my posts. But through TikTok, like Beibei maybe has made friends within specific communities, I've ended up talking to people who make similar content to mine, and I've started collaborating with them on other things. So like I started making a podcast with a few people from TikTok, and that's been really great. But my own content, because the way you have to push out content on TikTok, which is like really consistently and often quickly, there often isn't a lot of time to like sit down and think, how do I collaborate? It's and also that it's so short that those minute-long videos, I often don't have space to do stuff with other people. But that's not that I'm not for that. I guess it's just having the time to go out and do it.
So I've done, so I don't work with anyone to help me create content. I do know that other medic influencers do have interns working for them, actually. So that is something that people do. I have not got to that point at all yet. In terms of working collaboratively with other people, I've done that quite a bit, actually, because some of the posts that I've done are so broad in their scope that actually couldn't really be covered by one person. So I've done quite a lot of collab posts with friends and colleagues, people from dermatologists from across the pond, people who work in related areas but still relevant to the topic. And it's a great source of learning for me. Like, I've learned so much doing all of this stuff. So that's been really great. I was thinking about the whole TikTok collaboration thing. I guess in TikTok you can do the whole stitch thing, which I guess is not quite a collaboration, but you're sort of pairing with someone.
Yeah, there's a lot of the like followers I've ended up getting are because someone bigger than me has ended up stitching something or duetting something of mine. And so that's it's a very useful feature in terms of like getting people to your content. But I guess I never think of it in a way of collaboration. That did remind me that I do want to add, when I'm talking about more like heavier, in-depth science topics that are not my own field, I will talk to people about it. In my life, normally I'll just like email people and say, could you give me your opinion on this, or point me towards something that will help me flesh out my own understanding. So that's been very useful for me, but I wouldn't necessarily call that collaboration in the sense that Beibei uses it.
That sounds good. Essentially making sure your content is correct, and like you said, you know, ensuring it's got good correct content. Just another question for you. Would you, if you were to give academics advice looking to kind of start up their own social media platform or account alongside their work, what would you suggest for them how to get started in it? Sorry, go for Beibei.
I think it really depends on the platform, because if you want engagement and growth, you have to understand how the platform works to some extent. You can't, I don't think you can go in completely sort of blind to how it runs. So for example, on Instagram, especially in sort of my niche, it's all about saves and shares. So it has to be something that someone thinks, I've got to read this or share it with my friends. So that kind of drives the kind of content that you should create. So, and because the actual baseline quality of scientific information is actually quite deep already on Instagram, you kind of, that's why I had to make my content like very, very sciencey to kind of out-science the existing slightly bad science, if that makes sense. Whereas on TikTok, I guess it's more about like, you know, it's just creating, it's like creating really viral videos. So, and you have to understand how TikTok works to do that. And I definitely considered doing TikTok at one point, and I got some advice from well, there's actually a lot of dermatology TikTokers, and I've spoken to quite a few of them. And, you know, definitely some do it better than others. But one of them said to me, use the app loads before you actually start creating content, because then you will understand, like when you're doing it, like why someone else might do something. So yeah, I would say use the app a lot until you kind of become seasoned user, and then start creating content afterwards.
I think that's a really good advice, because it could be quite tempting to just jump straight in, but if you don't know what would make you want to engage with content, then why would anybody else want to engage with yours? Ella, anything to add?
Yeah, to add on to that specifically is the app. What do you want to do? What is your aim? Are you trying to like dispel misconceptions like Beibei, give a lot of information and make sure people are really well informed, or are you like me, just kind of more generally trying to engage with like young people about science? TikTok is about being entertaining. It's really like that's the only way you're going to reach anyone. It doesn't matter how like informative your video is if it doesn't like click with that part of your brain that's like, oh, that's a bit weird or interesting, you know. So if you're not willing to be performative to some extent, then being on TikTok is not the right platform. YouTube might work if you want to do like long form and like information videos, but again, you still have to be an engaging person. I don't necessarily think that's the same for all. Like if you want to do on Facebook, you can do posts and inform people that way. But then you still have to be willing to make these like really amazing infographics on Instagram. So it is a lot of effort, I'd say. So yeah, be willing to put the effort in. I agree with Beibei. Look at what kind of content that you should be putting out there and how the app works, and make a decision off that. And something Beibei said, which has really stuck with me: be authentic. That's such a yeah. Don't. It's not about like are you trying to get a following? It's about is there actually something you want to say, and then follow that through, I guess.
Oh, this is all really excellent advice. Thank you so much both for sharing it. I think we've got time for one more question before we end. So I think I will go with, you know, is there anything that surprised you the most about being a content creator? Beibei, if you'd like to go.
So I guess this may have been partly symptomatic of the pandemic and being in lockdown, but how quickly I grew my page really surprised me. I thought I would be firing off information into the abyss for a long time before anything hit. But I think partly because everyone was at home and doing skincare routines, it sort of, there was a lot of traction from the start, and I quickly saw a pattern for how to keep that going. And so the growth was like, you know, really, really good, especially during sort of the first lockdown up until about December. And then my own activity tailed off quite a lot. And the less you use the app, the less the app will reward you. And I think also on a personal level, you have to make a choice how much you want to be on your phone yourself, because there is, you know, you have to also live in the real world as well. And I'm not someone who wants to be totally on my phone all the time. So I think, you know, you do have to make that call at what, you know, you have to sort of limit your screen time to some extent. And unfortunately, as a content creator, you are kind of like, you're rewarded by going on the app all the time, which is something that's probably not very good for you as a person. So yeah, the growth was a surprise. And the second thing I would say is a surprise is how quickly it led to potential financial opportunities as well. It wasn't something that I set about doing, set about wanting to do at all. I was very much like, I want this to be almost like, you know, nothing to do with me. I was just going to, in fact, when I first created my account, my profile picture was like a cartoon. And then I realized it looked creepy and put a picture of my face instead. But I really wanted it to be about me. I wanted it to be about the information. But I guess it's more just that there's a lot of demand for dermatologists. Like, people want a dermatologist to be involved in, for example, the launch of a product, to talk about how to choose the right moisturizer, just very basic things. And I guess I realized that putting myself on a platform, you know, even I don't think they even cared that much about my following at all. Actually, it was more just another public platform to put yourself out on, a bit like LinkedIn. And yeah, I was surprised that it led to opportunities quite quickly in terms of engagement with like press and other sort of traditional media, and, you know, skincare brands who wanted a dermatologist involved in product launches and that kind of thing.
Great, thank you. And Ella, what did you find the most surprising about content creation?
The same in terms of following. On TikTok, it's I think a good deal of luck that will get you an initial like wave of followers. The fact that I've built up, I also thought, well, initially when I started posting, I was just putting up vaguely science related comedy videos because I wanted to practice for a stand-up comedy routine, and so and those really hit it off with people. So I was very, very surprised. And then I started putting more out there and getting more of a voice and a brand, I guess. But that was really, really surprising. And I think I said this in my presentation, but the amount of people who watch me live stream experiments is wild. I don't understand. I still do not understand why. I'll be pipetting for like 3 hours, and there'll be hundreds of people there asking
well, it's
questions.
a world they've never seen. You know, you're providing a window into something that they don't know what it is. Yeah, I mean, so it is really fascinating.
I understand now, but it's still a little bit shocking to me that there are people willing to just sit there for that long, and watch that. I don't know, it's really great.
It is great, and I think we've just come to the end of the session, but I just wanted to thank you both so much for sharing your stories about, you know, being on social media and connecting with the public about your science. And yeah, we're really grateful for the time. It was really insightful and really useful information. So thank you very much.